car into a crowd, killing one woman. Brian?
All right, Jillian, famed lawyer and lifelong Democrat Alan Dershowitz calling out his own party, saying amid the battle over Confederate monuments, liberals have bigotry of their own that they need to condemn.
I don't want to make moral equivalence. There's no comparison between the Nazis and the Klan on the one hand and some left-wingers on the other hand who may be using violence. But having said that, that doesn't give a pass to the people on the hard left who are themselves engaged in violence and also some bigotry of their own.
Joining us right now is that very professor, Harvard Law professor emeritus. He's the author of a new book, Trumped Up, How Criminalization of Political Differences Endangers Democracy. Alan Dershowitz, welcome back.
Thank you.
Professor, I cannot believe what I'm saying here. There's pressure on Mattis to rename military bases because they're named after Confederate leaders. In Baltimore last night, Christopher Columbus Monument was vandalized. At Columbus Circle here in New York City, they're debating on whether to take that statue down that was put up in 1890. University of Texas removes Confederate statues. Duke in North Carolina could be next. I can't go through all of this. Is there a danger in this?
Oh, of course, there's a danger of going too far. There's a danger of removing, Washington and Jefferson and other of our founding fathers who themselves owned slaves. Look, we have to use this as an educational moment. We have to take some of the statues that were put up more recently, for example, during the Civil Rights Movement, and perhaps move them to museums where they can be used to teach young students about how statues are intended sometimes for bad purposes, to glorify negatives and to hold back positive developments. But the idea of willy-nilly going through and doing what Stalin did, just erasing history and rewriting it to serve current purposes, does pose a danger, and it poses a danger of educational malpractice, of missing opportunities to educate people, and of going too far.
Is there also a danger of trying to put today's values on yesterday's generations? I mean, for example, Woodrow Wilson, they say, well, he was a segregationist, but he did this in Princeton. We'll take it down. 200 plus years ago, I think 12 of our first 15 presidents had slaves. I think we can go back and forth. You can look at what General Lee did. There was a time in which General Lee was being urged by his officers, make this a guerrilla war. We lost, but we don't have to quit. And he said, no, we got to bring the country back together on Lincoln's behest. And he kept the country back together like no other country has ever done after Civil War. We didn't erase their legacy. Why are we running to erase it now?
Well, not only that, but I think the implications are it's only that legacy that is of concern. Remember that President Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, put 110,000 Japanese Americans into detention centers, that President Lowell of Harvard imposed anti-Jewish quotas, that discrimination against women was rampant. Once you start rewriting history of African Americans in this country, you have to start rewriting history of discrimination against many, many other groups. Look, we're both a nation of immigrants and a nation of discrimination against immigrants. That's an important history for us to remember. And the other important thing is, do not glorify the violent people who are now tearing down the statues. Many of these people, not all of them, many of these people are trying to tear down America. Antifa is a radical, anti-American, anti-free market, communist, socialist, hard left, censorial organization that tries to stop speakers on campuses from speaking. They use violence, and just because they're opposed to fascism and to some of these monuments shouldn't make them heroes of the liberals. There's only one point that I want to correct you on. You talked about liberal bigotry. I was talking about radical hard left bigotry. I'm a liberal, and I think it's the obligation of liberals to speak out against the hard left radicals, just like it's the obligation of conservatives to speak out against the extremism of the hard right. And one of the reasons I was critical of President Trump when he suggested a moral equivalence, he didn't quite say it, was that he has a special obligation to condemn organizations that speak in his name. David Duke claimed to be speaking in his name. Spencer claimed to be speaking in his name. The radical left doesn't claim to be speaking in his name. So left liberals should be attacking the hard left, and centrist conservatives should be attacking the extremists on the hard right.
And I hope he does that tonight. It'll be good. I never expect him to put 3 minutes of that 25-minute speech in a military address last night. Maybe he'll do that tonight and just make it abundantly clear, at least make his critics who line up every day, make them struggle to find something to shoot at him with. Alan Dershowitz, always appreciate your perspective.
Thank you.
And someday I'm going to find out how nice that attic is that we keep